Tata Sons, one of the largest holding companies in the country, should have ideally been listed by now. It is in the list of Reserve Bank of India's upper layer non-banking financial companies, for which a public listing was mandatory by 30th of September 2025. But with its chairman Noel Tata reportedly opposed to the move and the matter also resting in court, the group has been able to avoid a listing.
What if I told you that one of India's most respected business groups could soon face one of the biggest governance decisions in its history? Not because of a merger, not because of an acquisition, and not because of a market crisis, but because of a technical regulatory circular issued by India's central bank. A circular that could potentially reshape the future ownership, governance structure, and transparency framework of the company sitting at the center of a business empire worth more than $300 billion. And that company is Tata Sons. Hi, this is Indraneel and welcome to the Spotlight Media and Technology. Today, we are looking beyond the headlines to understand what this latest RBI decision really means and why investors, governance experts, policymakers, and business leaders around the world are paying attention. India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India or RBI, has finalized new rules for identifying what it calls upper layer non-banking financial companies or NBFCs. Under the revised framework, NBFCs with assets exceeding 1 lakh crore can fall into a category requiring enhanced regulatory oversight, including potential mandatory public listing requirements. Importantly, the RBI rejected industry request to raise this threshold to 2.5 lakh crore. Instead, it retained the 1 lakh crore benchmark. The regulator also simplified the identification process. Previously, inclusion depended on a complex scoring methodology and ranking among the largest NBFCs. Now, asset size becomes the primary criterion. At a first glance, this sounds like routine financial regulation, but the implications may extend far beyond the financial sector. The reason is simple. Tata Sons reportedly has standalone assets of approximately 1.9 lakh crore.
Tata Sons, the holding company of 31 group firms including TCS, Tata Motors and Tata Steel, has remained unlisted since its inception. But that century-old arrangement is now under serious pressure. The RBI is pushing for a mandatory listing. The Shapoorji Pallonji Group, its second largest shareholder, wants out. And within the Tata Trusts, the charitable bodies that own 2/3 of Tata Sons, trustees are openly disagreeing with each other. Now, governance advisory firm InGovern has renewed the call, arguing that a company controlling over 25 lakh crore rupees in listed assets simply cannot continue to operate without public accountability. So what exactly is happening and what would going public actually mean for the Tata conglomerate and its millions of shareholders?
That places it well above the new threshold. Tata Sons is not merely another holding company. It sits at the center of a global conglomerate spanning automobiles, software, aviation, steel, hospitality, retail, consumer products, electronics, and emerging technologies. The broader Tata Group today carries a combined market value exceeding $300 billion. For years, one key question has remained unresolved. Should Tata Sons remain privately held or should it eventually become a publicly listed company? The latest RBI framework appears to keep that question very much alive. However, it is important to note that the RBI has not specifically named Tata Sons in its latest circular. Future implications will depend on which companies are formally identified in the regulator's annual Upper Layer NBFC list. From an ESG perspective, this story is fundamentally about governance. The G in the ESG. And governance is often the least discussed but arguably the most important pillar of long-term value creation. Today, Tata Sons operates as a private company. That structure allows Tata Trust, its majority shareholder, to exercise specific governance rights that are unique to the private company framework. Certain strategic decisions require affirmative support from trust-nominated directors. A public listing could potentially change that governance architecture. Board voting structure would evolve. Decision-making process could become more standardized. Minority shareholders' right would gain greater significance. Disclosure requirements would increase, and public market scrutiny would become a permanent feature of governance. This is why the debate is not simply about raising capital. It is about who exercises influence, how decisions are made, and what accountability looks like in one of India's most important corporate institutions. At the Spotlight Media and Technology, we view this through a broader ESG and governance lens. Globally, regulators are increasingly asking a simple question. When an institution becomes systematically important, should governance expectations also increase? Supporters of stronger disclosure frameworks argue that larger institutions should provide a greater transparency because their decisions affect investors, employees, suppliers, communities, and financial markets. Others argue that long-term institutions can sometimes perform